Hello and welcome to another interview with the dev. Today we'll be talking with Ryuo, and we'll be talking about their visual novel Soulcreek, which just completed. And congratulations on completing your very first visual novel. How do you feel?
Also, this is the part where everyone goes, "Oh my god, he's British," which is my usual reaction when people hear my voice. But no, it's a weird thing. I was expecting to feel like some kind of deep depression or something when it ended, but as it is, I just feel like, oh no, it's just felt like releasing another build. It always has this kind of week-long hype after a build released, and that's kind of been the same now. And by that time, I'm already looking to the next build. But in this case, I'm like, oh, I haven't got another build to do. I can kind of sit back and take it easy and just kind of interact with the community and keep my head down a little bit. So yeah, it's been kind of weird, but for the most part, I'm just carrying on.
How did you manage to basically sit yourself down and write all of those builds? Because those were long. It wasn't just like, here's an hour-long build. It was like, here's like 3 hours.
No, I'm one of those writers. I can't write if my mind's not in the right place. But what I tend to find is, I'll have like a brief period where I'm like in the zone, as it were, and I'll pump out like an entire build in like 3 or 4 days. And then once the first draft is done and it's just out there, and I've got 24,000 words just kind of sitting there, that's when you can look back at it and go, oh my god, this is absolutely awful what I've written. Which is what happens if you pump out a build in 2 or 3 days. So I'll spend the next like couple of months just going back and editing it and basically rewriting. By the end of the process, what the final build kind of looks like is nothing like what I wrote in the beginning. You kind of have to. I kind of have to trust my own editing process when I first write it, and I look at it and think, "Oh my god, this is awful. What have I created? This is never gonna." So you kind of have to trust that you can go back and make it make sense, which is usually how things work. On occasion, I've had to just go back and rewrite an entire build because I'm like, no, this has gone in completely the wrong direction. But yeah, for the most part, I just have to trust that I'm going to have these surges where I can just write and get on with it, and it just kind of comes out easily in those situations.
Actually, a follow-up on that, how many times did you have to go back and like say like, oh, this isn't working, I need to redo this, or like, oh, this went a completely different place than from where I wanted it to?
How many times do I have to do it? So the first build came out in one take, because that was when I was just kind of experimenting. It's like, oh, I'll just do this for fun. No one's gonna read this, surely. So I didn't really care about making it good. I was just messing around. The second build was fine. The third build, the Indulgence build, that was completely rewritten from the top down. Because initially, there were going to be 3 completely different routes on that day, depending on how much you wanted the the not safe for work material or not. There was going to be a route where Alex took Flare, and you as a character were really horny the whole time. There was going to be a route where just Loken took it, and he was really horny the whole time. Or there was going to be a route where neither of you took it, and it was a bit more chilled out. And then I started playing with a 4th route where both characters took it, and then I got halfway through it, and I was just like, "This is too much work." I don't know how writers who have to do multiple routes can do it. So my respect to any visual novel who has multiple routes, because I tried it for one day and I just couldn't do it. So I basically cut it down to a much more condensed version, which is kind of the version we have now. And also the last build, the one that just came out, that got rewritten twice from the ground up, which is why it took so long to get out, because I knew where I wanted it to go, to have this kind of final confrontation at Soulcreek itself, but there was this whole space in between where Loken and Alex are traveling, and basically they just got each other, which normally is fine. Their dialogue kind of writes themselves, but there's so much emotional weight behind it, and there's so much that they're carrying on the way, and juggling all of that was really difficult. But I got there in the end. But no, the final build was definitely the hardest to do. That had so many rewrites and so many edits and so many changes. But we got it done. We got there.
Actually, talking about that, is the ending that we got, is it what you had envisioned when you first started? Or were you just sort of like going like, I wanted to end this way, but then like another time later, like, maybe you could end this way instead?
So, the ending basically came out how I wanted it to come out. The main kind of point that was always going to be consistent was that little post-credit scene. That came out kind of exactly as I pictured it from kind of build 3 or 4, where I finally decided, this is where it's gonna end. The epilogue itself, kind of where you're kind of saying your goodbye to your this cast of characters and finding out where we are, that was a little bit more organic, and it kind of grew as the story was progressing earlier, because the way I kind of write is I don't always know the exact beats of every character. A lot of stuff comes out as I write it. So I had to kind of figure out where's a good place for these characters to end up as it was going. So the epilogue took a little bit of working around to get everyone in the right place, but that little kind of post-credits scene was the only kind of bit that I thought, no, this is the final kind of exclamation point of it all, and it stayed the same. So yeah, the epilogue was pretty fluid throughout, except for that last bit.
Actually, did you or do you have any like prior writing experience, or is this like your first time just sitting down and writing something like this?
I have to think about that, actually. I used to write a lot when I was a kid. I wouldn't call that writing experience though. I went to university at Bath in England, where I studied theatre, and a big part of that was there was a kind of a film production part that I got really into. The first major thing I wrote was a radio play, which I then kind of edited, and I did a whole editing course, and that was all audio design, which is where I kind of learned to do sound effects and stuff in a narrative fashion. That was kind of my first kind of writing experience, and people told me, oh, yeah, you're kind of good at this. So I thought, oh, yeah, I can write a novel. But it turns out I can't write a novel because I just don't have the patience for that medium. But then I started getting into visual novels, and they're a great medium. They're kind of the perfect middle ground between writing a good amount of prose, but you're also in a script format, so you can cut out a lot of the kind of description and just rely on the visuals, but you can throw in sound effects and stuff as well. So it's a perfect medium between something more cinematic and something written. And me kind of having been raised on watching hundreds of horror movies, for me that was the perfect medium. So yeah, I think most of my writing experience came from university, but this was my first time writing something big, actually, to completion. So kind of a first-time writer, maybe, but kind of not, because I am semi-trained, I guess.
You mentioned the having some experience with like I guess you could call it SFX And like, okay, so when I was editing the videos for Soulcreek, and I was trying to edit the scenes where the infants, the demons are like popping up, so you start hearing a whole bunch of like different sounds, and then like in the black zones where you have like sort of like that droning sound in the background. I mean, it kind of explains that you already had the experience to do that, but like, how hard was it to do that in the visual novel?
It's a nightmare. If anyone's ever coded in renpy and they look at my script, they will probably look at it and go, "What was this guy doing?" Because it's just a massacre of text. And there's certainly probably better ways I could have done it, but what I did kind of worked for me. It is tough though, because you kind of have to work within the limits of the engine. And you want certain sounds to play at certain points so that you've got a good control of the pacing. Like the best way and also you want the sounds to kind of gel together in terms of their EQ and their mixing, which is tough when you're working with public domain sounds and they're all recorded in different ways. But there's a couple of strategies I figured out, like just having little beats between sounds, like little booms to kind of introduce new drones, layering sounds on top of each other. That's something I did a lot. And obviously if you replay the visual novel now, you'll kind of see the sounds getting more progressively advanced and more layers as the days go on, because I kind of figured it out as I was going. And that kind of all, for me, like the final test was that scene in day 11, I think it is, where the infant attacks the Dravonia village. That scene was always going to be a nightmare, but ended up being really easy because there's music in the background, and there's not a lot of music in Soulcreek, but that scene had music throughout, which kind of created a kind of blanket noise in the background, and I could easily end up just inserting whatever sounds I wanted, and they kind of gelled in really easily because the blanket background kind of covers everything. So what I thought was going to be the hardest scene ended up being one of the easiest.
I do notice that a lot when editing, that it's easier to edit scenes that do have like the music and then you have the sound effects than just the ones with the sound effect, because then you have to go in and say like, okay, so this specific part has this specific sound effect starting from this point and ending at this specific point. But when there's a song, it's like you can just sort of like sneak it in there, and then if it's not completely perfect, it's fine because the music is sort of covering up the imperfection.
Exactly, yeah. And that's like when we did film production, when we actually made some short films, one of the first things I did as the editor is find a good atmos in the background that covers up any sudden sound spikes so that you can really easily blend those sounds together. If you don't have that, for me, it's really noticeable. One of the things you want to do as an audio editor is to be invisible. Like, you don't want people to know that you've done any work. Basically, you want the audio to be so kind of well sequenced that it just kind of flows, and people don't know that there's any audio editing there. Same with editing any kind of visuals. If people notice, oh, that was a really sharp transition into that scene, then unless it was deliberate, which it can be, you've kind of almost shown yourself like, oh, there is an editor here. It kind of takes you out of it a little bit, and having those background sounds really checks. Even the sounds even the places where there aren't music, I just have like, I think I have about 5 different kind of just drones that go in the background that I use for various reasons. So anytime there's kind of a sequence where there's going to be a lot of sound, you know it's coming because this low drone kind of appears on the background, and that's there to kind of hide or to kind of make the sound sequences blend in a little bit easier. So audio tips, if you're ever doing any audio editing, use drones. They're fantastic.
They especially worked in the black zones because you have like the drone of the black zones, like, oh, I am in the black zone. You can hear the droning in the background. But it also works because then when there's like a demon or there's something going on in the background, it sort of like blends in with the drone that's already there. It worked really well.
Yeah, and I think there was, I think it's day 9 or day 10. There's a long sequence where Alex is in the black zones by himself and he's just got bite. And I think that's the first time that the characters are in a background, but there's no atmospheric drone in the background. There's just kind of this kind of creepy kind of background noise of the city, which also really works for me because there's not much sound effects going on. It's all dialogue, so you've still got that kind of sound in the background that's kind of creepy and a little bit eerie. But then when we get to the sequence where Alex has his vision of Gaia for the first time, you hear it straight away. The drone comes back in and it's like, oh, okay, we're in another sequence again. So yeah, definitely any sound editing that you're doing, a music track is great, but I prefer atmospheric drones myself, or just atmospheric sounds. On that topic, the sound of the Draconi village, the background sound for that has been an absolute nightmare because it's the only sound. I tried to make one myself and it just didn't work. It's the only sound of kind of a medieval kind of fantasy town I could find, but so many parts of it was so obnoxious. Like there's the sound of like the chickens in the background, someone smashing like a hammer in the background, and that plays for a long time because you spend so much time in the Draconi village, and it just became, I think for me and also for a lot of readers, it became so obnoxious. So I edited that down so many times. I think I'd made another cut of it in the last build to try and make it as less obnoxious as possible, but honestly, that gave me so many headaches. I hear chickens when I go to bed now.
Actually, how hard was it to find like the sound effects and the atmospheric effects and all those other little effects in the public domain? Or did you like at one point go like, you know what, I want to make my own because I don't want to have to keep looking for them?
I did make a few of my own, or the one, but most, again, like I haven't got a proper Foley recording setup anywhere where I am. So recording my own sounds was kind of out of the questions, but on occasion, like I just found a particular sound and then edited it in Audacity to get what I wanted. But a lot of the times actually, like I would go, oh, okay, I need like I need this. I need sound effects for the first, like for example, the first demon attack when infant glitch attacks for the first time. I went on Free Sounds and just searched up a load of sounds, and they actually directed what the scene was going to be. So I led with the sound rather than with the writing, which is easier because you're free to kind of just grab whatever you want and write around it, rather than like, I need this specific sound for this specific scene at that exact moment, because then you're limited. Like, I have to have a sound that fits exactly this. Whereas finding demon sounds is easy because you just search for demonic kind of digitized mechanical sounds, and there's loads of options come up. So demon sounds were never a problem because there's so many really good ones on the public domain.
Now we're going to get into the topic of the lore Soulcreek, which we, you know. So, do you think that you would ever go back, now that you've completed the visual novel, you go back and say like, you know what, I want to expand on this? Or are you just sort of done with it for now?
So yes, the sequel question, because you should see my DMs, and it's all sequel. When's the sequel? It's like the birds from Finding Nemo that are like mine, but sequel. So to say that there's no more stories that can be told in this world would be really daft, because obviously there's loads you could tell in this story. The elevator pitches write themselves. The first obstacle would be picking an area to write about. Like, just off the top of my head, you could write about the origins of Gaia. You could pick stories from the Cascade itself. You could write about the Saber Wars or some of the other wars. You could talk about stuff that's happened in the Hushed Lands and explore that whole area. You could write about the Automonks. You could write about Exotech. And each of those is a story to itself. So there's almost too many kind of areas to explore. So I think if I was going to kind of expand on the lore, I'd have to pick an area to go into. I think the most difficult one to write about would be the Cascade, because the Cascade itself is such a mysterious time period that we don't really know about. And in my head, it takes place over like 200, 300 years. So it's a huge period of time. It's like saying, I'm going to write a story about the Stone Age, when like the Stone Age was thousands of years. Like, you've got to pick a point, really. Like, just one of the themes that I wish I had written about, but it didn't really fit into the story, was I wish I'd been able to kind of explore religion a little bit in this world. Kind of gets touched a little bit on the last build, this idea of faith in Illayla and what that would actually look like. But it never really got a chance to. There was never a point where it would fit. I mean, Whispers of Carmine, you've kind of got a cult, which is kind of in the same vibe. And as I said, Loken talks a little bit about faith. People think the stars are gods and the black zones are the only true gods and such. But it just didn't seem like a world where there would be a set religion. Because, I mean, this is a world where, demons and horrors and such are real. And half of the culture of these people is denying the existence of that and staying safe. So to have a religion that almost explores that and tries to justify that would be almost counterintuitive. But I could see there being cults out there that kind of try to justify why the demons are there. I mean, that was Zahana's whole thing. So it's kind of there, but just things like that I would like to expand on. As to whether or not it's actually going to happen, I'm not retiring yet. I've definitely got more to write and more to tell. Whether or not it becomes a sequel, I'm not quite ready to announce yet. For me, like, the conduit to which we explore this world is always going to be the characters, and I have to make sure we've got the right cast of characters to go out and explore more of the lore before we settle down and actually write a story. So it's not a question I can easily answer.
Actually, something that I forgot to ask is, how did you come up with the idea of Soulcreek? Like, were you just sitting there one day playing like a horror game or watching a movie and it's like, this would be an interesting story?
Oh boy. Where did Soulcreek come from? Soulcreek is it was birthed from so many different kind of ideas that were kind of stolen and merged and kind of melted together. I couldn't really point to like one influence as, this is where the idea came from. I mean, I wanted a story that kind of almost fitted with the vibe of what we have for vision novels already. So it kind of fits in with the audience in a little bit, but then but also to have my kind of own kind of horror take on it. And I knew it was going to be a little more. I knew it was always going to be a little bit more abstract horror. and it was always going to be a little bit more unsettling, and it was going to get progressively more terrifying as you go on. But a lot of the characters and kind of the world building itself just came about through writing. I kind of sat down with, okay, I'm writing this story about a guy. He wakes up in this future and he doesn't know what's going on. And I remember sitting down and writing the first build, and I almost have to get to a point in the story that I'm writing where Alex asks, well, what's really going on out there? And then I, as the writer, sit there and go, what is going on out there? And it kind of prompts me to kind of create something. And then, oh, well, what if it's this? So I'll try writing that down. And then that will lead to Alex asking another question. Well, what about this? Oh, well, there are these demons. And oh, hang on, what are these? So, yeah, a lot of the world came about through writing it, just sitting down and playing with the keyboard, basically. I never, like, I didn't come to the keyboard with, right, the idea is set, let's make it happen, because I'm just not that kind of writer.
Mm. Actually, before we started doing this, I started watching a show on TV called Pluribus. Have you heard of it?
I haven't heard of that one, no.
Well, the premise kind of reminded me of how, like, the events of how the infants, the demons came to be started, where you have a signal coming from space, and humans doing what they always do is like, this is interesting, and then they realize that, oh, this signal is made up of 4 parts, which technically are like signifying like an RNA thing. So like, oh, let's create this RNA sequence and then see how it works, and then this thing becomes a pathogen, which then infects humans, and then all of a sudden it turns them all into a hive mind. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of how things kind of went in the story, like when the signal was turned into like a data signal type thing, AI, and then it was like secretly infiltrating humanity, and then all of a sudden Cascade.
Yeah. No, I definitely see the comparison there. It's actually funny. A lot of people, the comparison that a lot of people have made when they ask me, oh, was this influenced by was this an influence for Soulcreek? A lot of people quoted Horizon Zero Dawn at me, which I haven't played. But I looked up and yeah, definitely similar. And a lot of people quoted the Stalker games, which I haven't played. But again, very similar. I mean, Soulcreek is... There's so many tropes in there that are borrowed from other things. You could point to a lot of things and say, oh, this influenced this, because everything that I watch kind of merges into my head as one thing. So it's really hard for me to go and say, this is the main influence for that. It would be better to pick kind of specific parts of the story, like specific characters or specific scenes, and what was the influence for that scene or that moment or that character. Like Loken, for example. I borrowed a lot of Kratos for Loken from God of War, just in the sense that he's got this kind of very stoic, almost kind of very wise and non-verbal sense to him. Like he says as little as he can, but says a lot at the same time. But also, even though he's got this kind of stoic kind of stubbornness to him, there's also a real vulnerability to him. So yeah, if anyone's wondering, Loken, I borrowed from Kratos for him, and maybe a little bit of Batman, a little bit.
It's actually kind of funny because a lot of people took that stoicism and that like sort of like I say as little as possible, and I kind of have my actions speak for me, as him being a little neuro spicy. And
yeah,
like, did you like see that and said like, yeah, I see that, or was like, yeah, that was completely unintentional?
No, I actually have on my desktop, I have a rule book for how Loken talks, and I stick to it very, very strictly. And So Loken's manner of speech came about organically. It was one of those things that I had to kind of go back and make sure I've got it all consistent, and it came about through writing. But it just came out that he kind of talks in this very kind of roundabout way that you think, oh, there's something. He's got a bit of a spicy brain about him. I'd never confirm, oh yes, he is neurodiverse, or he has this or he has that, because to me Loken is just Loken. It's just the way that he talks. And then it kind of came about that, well, maybe the reason he talks like that is there's something from his past. And in my work, I work with I work with a lot of kids who have who have kind of quite traumatic backgrounds, and I've worked with a lot of kids who are non-verbal, and I thought, well, maybe Loken's was non-verbal as well, because when you're in that mindset, you develop your own strategies for language, which is exactly what Loken's done. And there are moments where Loken is just parroting what he's heard already. Usually he's parroting what his mentor Aya has said to him, which is where he talks very fluidly. And there are other moments where he's like caught and he's really embarrassed about something, where he just becomes very stubborn, and he just goes to his kind of single line responses like, no. For me, whenever Loken is going no, that's the equivalent of like a stubborn husky growl for me.
So, you said picking specifics about the story to talk about what influenced that. What ended up influencing the infants/demons? Like, where did the inspiration for these sort of Lovecraftian mechanical monsters come from?
It was this idea that Illayla is kind of the land of Illayla itself is kind of almost like a traumatized brain, and the story talks a lot for me. A lot of the theme of the story is this idea that memory and trauma link directly, and how we remember events, or how we don't remember events, or can't remember events, can manifest in our anxieties or our fears or in our breakdowns. And I thought, well, these demons are kind of a manifestation of Illayla's trauma from the Cascade. I mean, you think about the Cascade, I mean, this is... Not only is it kind of just a horrible thing that happened, but you're also talking about basically the genocide of an entire subspecies, the slaughter of humanity. And to get kind of deep into it, if you look at genocide in like a historical context, there's often kind of a twisted kind of ideology behind it. That was Hitler's whole thing. You know, these people are inferior, and removing them is for the benefit of everything. It was this twisted and evil thing. But if you go into Soulcreek's story, the removal of the human race was a matter of survival, you know. And bipeds and humans, these are people that have lived together mutually and have no desire to kill each other, but their hand is basically forced. You know, if humanity exists, demons will conquer the world. There's no justification to not exterminate them. And part of the horror of that is how it turned into a sport. It turned into a gleeful, psychopathic, just extermination. But I think the only way their society, these bipeds, could cope with doing something so cruel was to be cruel about it, and then bury the memory of the guilt of that ever happening, which is what the Cascade is. It's this horrible event that kind of ended the world and changed everything and flooded the world with this kind of force of magic, but it's also something that people did that is so horrible, things they had to do to survive, that they don't want to remember this. This is something that is just as traumatic and soul destroying for all the bipeds as it was for humanity, which by the end of the story I think Alex realizes. And from that cascade, from everything that happened, you have these creatures come out of it that are part machine, because they're kind of manifested by humanity's kind of greed to look into technology and to want more, and how the idea of this magical force we can't understand blends with our world, but also the fact that they are so unknowing and so horrible to face because you're looking at your past and your trauma that you just cannot deal with, that even the mere existence of it is traumatic. And they just kind of came about through that, really. And I always thought, well, they're always going to be kind of an audio experience. It's always going to be a sound that you hear with demons, which is why kind of a lot of Soulcreek is audio based. And it opened up a lot of possibilities, because I thought, well, if you've got these creatures that are so unknowing, you can almost do anything with them, and they don't require a justification because there is no justification for them. By the end of the story, I think they're demystified a little bit. And this is before we get into the fact that they're actually that each demon is basically just an egg waiting to hatch through a human soul, and that's a whole nother thing, the whole ascendancy thing. But yeah, demons themselves, they were fun to write. They were fun to write about. But it's always more about what these demons, what these creatures do to people, the mere idea of them, than the creatures themselves, basically. It's a dark topic to discuss.
They're kind of like forbidden knowledge in a way, like
in a
of
sense,
the past, of what is being whispered through Soulcreek and stuff like that, and bipeds just can't take that type of knowledge, whereas humans, I guess it was built for them in a way.
In a sense, I think humanity are the ones, because humans, always dabbling with what they shouldn't, which is pretty common trope. There's this idea that these creatures have this link to humanity, and humanity's souls were kind of twisted to be closer to them, and in a sense almost become them, which is a little bit going into the point of that post-credit scene, because humanity obviously were the ones that the bipeds exterminated. So there's that hidden trauma and that hidden guilt of them coming back, because nobody can remember what humans even look like. In the beginning of the story, they get Alex, they think, oh, it's just a furless rat or something. Alex actually has to tell Loken, no, I'm a human, and he doesn't believe him at first. The whole idea, no, they're all dead. What? We don't even know what a human looks like. So demons and humans almost kind of have this similarity about them, in that they're both horrors from the past that people would rather forget. And then Alex comes along and basically manifests that throughout the story and becomes something potentially even more horrifying by the end, but also potentially a force for good. We just don't know. But he becomes as unknowing as they are in my books.
Loken had mentioned that there was various types of demons before that he had encountered, like the swarm type, and then some that like fly. Was there ever a time when they were gonna encounter that in the story, or was that sort of something like you thought of towards the end of the story? So like, there could have probably been these different demons and just never saw them.
It was always going to be. There was always going to be 2 encounters with infants. Well, I think there's. I'm trying to think how many there are. I think there's a couple more, but there was all the infants themselves that we encounter were always going to be kind of a little bit more basic. But I just kind of fed this idea that there could be endless like shapes of them, just to kind of feed people's imagination a little bit, and just to make them seem even more like there's so much different variety. I think the only infant that is kind of really explored kind of in a greater context a little bit is Gaia, who is Gaia is basically she's basically a representation of this fear that Illayla is a tiny part of the world, like insignificant part of this planet that has been decimated, and she's not from this part of the planet. She's from beyond, because Lake Crike is a tunnel. Basically, it leads to the oceans, and that's where she comes from. So she is basically a statement saying, "Yeah, you think it's bad in here? There's out there. This is what it looks like." So Alex gets a tiny glimpse of knowing there is more out there, and it's so much bigger than we could possibly imagine. In his case, that actually motivates him more, because he goes, well, I know there's more out there, so I have to go and find it. I have to go and see it. But no, Gaia is the only kind of other infant that was ever really going to really be expanded. I just like throwing these ideas out to people and going, hey, it could be this or it could be that, and seeing what people do with it, basically.
Now, Automonks. So there's some mystery surrounding them, and then also the fact that they may be connected to the Black Zones. So could you expand a little on that, especially with the antennas and like basically them powering the antennas? Or would that be a bit of like a spoiler type thing?
Yeah, so the Automonks were an odd idea, and I guess they would be the closest thing to a kind of religious cult in Illayla. We never see them. We don't really know what their motivations are. They don't talk. That's really key. They don't speak. Aeon was one of them, but he never actually got into their inner circle because, he ran away. He didn't want to be part of it. So even he doesn't really know what their inner workings are. The only hint we kind of get about the Automonks is, as Alex is going into his confrontation, he and Bite see these scrawlings on the wall. These kind of Stone Age style markings that have been left behind by Exotech. And they tell the story of how people who are close to Soulcreek, who are studying it, slowly had their minds basically twisted by the knowledge of it, and almost kind of devolved into this kind of cult kind of mindset. And the implication there is that Exotech are the Automonks, that this company that discovered Soulcreek carried on working on it and carried on trying to save it, but it was ultimately a futile effort, and they turned into the Automonks in the end. And then there's the implication from that scene that the Automonks are the ones that set up these antennas. And these antennas, they're giving off these signals that Alex summarizes, well, these signals are the Black Zone. Well, even that explanation is kind of left open to, well, why would they create this? Is it to keep the demons enclosed? Because if they would do that, why would they make it so that there's less space for people to live in than there is in the Black Zones? Why would you put yourself in the cage if you're trying to cage a monster? But there's also the fact that the Automonks kind of worshipped this sound, or came to revere it or fear it in a way. So maybe the Black Zones are kind of almost like their temple, which is why they want power in Illayla maintained, and they want certain structures maintained so that they can keep this signal going, so as not to disrupt the status quo. But the Automonks ultimately are left kind of mysterious, because that's how they're supposed to be. But I think there's enough evidence in there that people can kind of draw a conclusion on what they are or what they're trying to do a little bit. That's about all I can say about the Automonks.
A person named Shiseko asked about the state of metallurgy in Illayla. Like, do they have blacksmiths, or is it just like based on what the Blackrunners found? Is there like active mining, or do they know how to use the raw materials?
Yes to all of them. So yeah, there's definitely blacksmiths, and it would be a combination of there would be definitely like talented smiths who are able to break down old metals and reforge them. There would be miners. There's no mines in Illayla because none of the clans kind of have access to this, but in the Hush clans, definitely there would be mines. Weapons, there would be iron and copper, I imagine. So it's definitely a business that's still going, but you know, a lot of like equipment in Illayla is salvaged from old stuff, and that's always desired over stuff that's made fresh. So you've kind of got this weird appearance where everything kind of has a modern appearance, like Mylo's clothes, for example. You know, he's wearing a modern hoodie, even though this was probably crafted by people who have never seen a real hoodie in their life. So you would have kind of a real mix of styles and designs. But yeah, definitely there would be blacksmiths, there'd be like tanners, leather workers, farmers. Industry is still definitely a thing in Illayla. More in Illayla than it is in the Hushlands, but yeah, it's definitely still a thing, I'd say.
Is the language that is spoken in Illayla like an actual language, or is it one that you just sort of like made up on the spot?
Oh god. This is where I have to admit that I have no idea about language. No, so Illaylian, it was the idea with Illaylian is that there's this language that bipeds speak, and there's this language that humans speak because their mouths are formed different, and they can't kind of speak in the same language, but both kind of know their language. A bit like if you live in the UK and you've ever been to Wales, like you'll see the signs in Wales are in Welsh and English, because people in Wales can speak Welsh, but they also speak English. I kind of got the idea from that a little bit. As for the language itself, it's not a real language. I haven't got unfortunately, I wasn't able to make like a full language for it. I basically pushed together kind of some key phrases that I knew I would need, decided on how they were kind of laid out a bit, and just used it for those key themes, like where Loken and Alex talk to each other outside of with their language barrier. But the need for it kind of falls off a little bit after day 5, or no, I think day 7, where Glitch possesses Alex for the first time, and Alex kind of realizes, oh, I do know both languages, but I've been kind of repressing that. So it's not, unfortunately, it's not a real language. But I mean, if I had the skills, I would make it one. But I don't have that. I don't have that skills. I don't think I'm the right person.
Talking about Glitch real quick, was Glitch able to control the infant because he was ascended, or was that just something specific to him? Because he seems kind of special.
I think ascended demons, that is a whole thing we haven't seen yet, because Loken makes a comment in build 6, which is overlooked quite a bit, I think, which is where he says ascendancy is a birth. After birth, there is growth. Glitch hasn't had a chance to grow yet. And we're talking about almost godlike entities here. Glitch is still even in his ascended form, he's still in his infancy. He's only a couple of weeks old. We're talking about beings that grow over hundreds and hundreds of years to become kind of supremely powerful. Even in his infant form, I think ascended demons grow kind of in a way that they develop powers and they develop kind of vibes and personalities based on what happens to them and what they need. It's kind of like they kind of direct their own evolution. So you could have two ascended demons growing up in two parts of the world that are completely different entities by the end of their growth. So I think Glitch kind of develops his abilities based on what he needs. Like for me, if I was the infant, it would be almost like I'm an infant in the black zone, but there's a light over there. Glitch kind of creates a kind of lighthouse and says, "Come over here, and there's food over here," and kind of summons the demon to that place. So it's not like he has control of it, but more that he's able to kind of lure it to certain places that he wants, because that's what he needed to do. So he kind of evolved that ability to be able to do so. And if he had continued to grow in that way, that ability would have got incrementally more powerful. So he could have maybe learned to direct whole hordes of demons and such. But I think in that moment, he just kind of was able to just lure that one demon to that one place. There's no kind of relationship between them, and the poor infant is probably just like a lost lamb. I mean, these things don't have much coherent intelligence. They're just kind of balls of fury and confusion and chaos.
I kind of pictured it sort of like he found a wild animal, he brought it out, he has it chained, and he just like sort of throws a stick or the food or something over there in that general direction, and there just happens to be people there, which the wild animal ends up attacking because it doesn't know any better.
Yeah,
and, like,
basically. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly that. And I almost think that scene where the demons attacks the village is probably just as traumatic for the poor demon, because it's in a place it doesn't know outside of the black zone. So it's like a fish that has been. It's almost like a shark that has been thrown into a crowded place on land, and it just thrashes about like, what the hell is going on? And just destroys everything, and he just cuts a load of people down before being thrown back into the ocean and going, where did I go just now? This poor infant. Yeah, I picture it kind of like that.
Let's talk about the glyphs a little bit real quick. So, somebody, Mexaboy, had a really interesting question about how the glyphs work, and Alex had mentioned that the glyphs need like a purpose in order to work, right?
Yeah, they need intent, I think was his word.
So, when he was basically drowning in the lake, the intent was basically to teleport him out of the lake. So does that mean that if Alex had any other less destructive intent, like for example healing, would the glyphs be able to heal or even revive somebody?
Absolutely, yeah. The thing about the glyphs that Alex creates are basically so the algorithm was basically a key that was created for Biped to almost act as kind of a gateway to using the power of Soulcreek safely. When Alex broke the algorithm, he, as a human, having that kind of inherent, almost genetic connection to Soulcreek, is able to reconstruct it into a key that a human can use, which is what he does. And it acts as almost kind of a safety between him and that power so that he can pull it out and use it in different ways. When he reassembles the algorithm, he loses that. And that safety is no longer there. That almost like those training wheels are kind of gone. So using his power becomes incredibly dangerous. But he slowly discovers, actually, I don't need these glyphs. I have that ability. I just have to learn how to use it. I have to earn it. Which is what he does by the end of the story in that post-credit scene. But in theory, there's not much that Alex couldn't do when he had those glyphs in place, because he's protected. Basically, he has absolutely no fear of any kind of psychic backlash, so he could do a lot of good things. But given where his mindset is, it always turns to rage, so he doesn't do good things. Where he's at the end of the story, where he doesn't have those glyphs, but he's still learned to fish into Soulcreek's power and get what he wants, there are still going to be limitations on what he can do. But he's basically, he's kind of like he's learned to ride his bike without his training wheels. There's still a risk he can fall off if he pushes it, but yeah, in theory, he's a very powerful person. He's supremely powerful.
So, in the little forum that I made, almost everyone was asking, why is everyone so hot in this visual novel?
Because I like hot men is why. That's the answer. I mean, I know my audience. I know what you guys like. There was always going to be hot guys in this. There's always going to be a very homoerotic subtext to almost everything. I wanted to write a story that has a LGBT relationship in it, because you don't get that in mainstream media. So it's like, well, I'm going to make it myself then. So I have, basically. And the romance subplot was always going to be there, and it was always going to be erotic, because not only just because I like not safe for work stuff, because hell, why not? But because having that enabled, and it almost gives it, for me, it was like, well, in that case, I can do a completely uncensored look at Alex and Loken's kind of relationship. I can see every part of it, not just like, oh, we're going to fade to black when they get to the spicy parts. It's like, no, I want to see how they interact with the spicy parts, not just when it goes really well, but when it becomes really awkward. Like Alex is going, anatomically, you look weird. What do I do with this? Those awkward parts where they don't actually know what to do with each other. Those, I kind of wanted all of that in, just because that's character building, not just because it's porn bait, basically. But there's also a lot of porn bait in there. But no, the hot characters, that all goes down to Elle, who did all of the character sprites. She draws very hot men. She's very good at it. And she draws very hot ladies as well, I've got to say.
Tahki.
Oh yeah. Elle actually, she told me that she has chickens, and she's named one of her chickens Tahki, which I just think is absolutely brilliant.
So, did you base any of the characters on any like real world people, or was it just like how they came out of your brain?
Tahki is based on a friend I have who lives up north, and she came about. I mean, I had a blueprint for a character that was going to be the first Guardian, but I hadn't quite decided, like, what's she going to be like? And I remember I was telling this friend about Tahki, and telling him about Loken, and she replies with her northern accent, Loken. Who's Loken? It sounds well funny. And I was like, that's it. You're Tahki from now on. And I was like, your voice. You are Tahki. And just with the accent came this extremely crass character who was just an absolute pleasure to write. So yeah, that's where Tahki came from. Dravonia as well. She was she's based on my one of my bosses where I used to work, who was this who was an incredibly nice guy, but he just had a vibe about him that you respect him. You know, you're a little bit scary. He's a lovely guy, would never do anything bad, but you would never want to get on his bad side. He just had, like, he was ex-military, and he didn't take any bullshit. He would call you out on absolutely every inconsistency, no matter what. Like, he never I'll be polite and not say anything. He would call, oh, hang on, but you said this earlier, so which is it? And that was where Dravonia came from, this idea of a character who is incredibly authoritative and very stern and doesn't take any crap from anyone. Like, she's very on it. And Dravonia as well, like, she's also a keeper of secrets. She's a very conniving character, like extremely clever, which is kind of how she beats Kaius in the Saber Wars in the first place. So she was a tough character to write, because we don't really get into her machinations much. We only see it on the outside.
Out of all the characters that you were writing, was there one that was the most difficult to write?
Kaius easily. He was, oh my god, he's my favorite character as well. But definitely Kaius. It was really difficult to write his dialogue. Probably I'd say pre-possession Kaius, or at least pre-revelation, before we know he's possessed, because he's a pretty different character after that. But Kaius is, through most of the story, he's this stone cold character, but he's honorable. And yeah, what I love about him is his dialogue. He's fiercely intelligent, and I needed that to come across with his every line. He needed to be able to say a lot through as few words as possible. So all of his lines have tons of subtext around them, and he has a particular kind of choice of vocabulary that reflects his intelligence. By today's standards, he's something of a genius. Like, he's one of the reasons I wrote out the whole backstory of the Saber Wars was because I just wanted to explore what he would have been like in his prime, which we don't really see in Alex's story. And in that Saber Wars backstory, we kind of learn that he's staunchly loyal to his own beliefs, but he's not heartlessly uncompromising. In fact, his honor is what loses him the war, because Dravonia's cunning enough to exploit it. She doesn't have the same kind of standards of honor that he does. And because she knows him, she kind of cuts him where she kind of cuts into his honor, and that's how she beats him. And that's what's so tragic about Glitch taking him over, because Glitch strips that away from Kaius. He kind of takes away his honor, so he has no qualms about lying and such. There's a whole speech he gives when they're on their way to the Black Dawn, where he kind of loses his temper, and he says, loyalty will never surmount dishonor, which kind of, for me, kind of encapsulates his bitterness over losing the Saber Wars, because he's discovered that my loyalty and my honor will always be beaten by people who don't have any, which is why he's kind of got the secret resentment for Dravonia, which Glitch just takes complete advantage of and is his downfall. Glitch just destroys him using that little part of his soul. That's the tragedy of Kaius, and that's why I love him so much, because he's such a good character that fell so far. Bless him.
Speaking about him and Glitch, I don't know if this was intentional, but after, I believe, Alex mentions that they have to go to the, I already forgot what it's called, when they were gonna have to go and fix the algorithm, Kaius like jumps in and goes like, "Oh, my informed sister might have mentioned this," and it kind of seemed like he was sort of like coming up with it on the spot, but he also looked kind of like uncomfortable doing it. So like that kind of reminded me of what you said of like that once Glitch took over or jumped into Kaius, he just started to change, and because Glitch was sort of changing him, like taking the parts that were Kaius away from him.
Yeah, 'cause that's what Glitch does. I think Alex's words is he force feeds you the darkest parts of your soul and turns you into something that you'd rather not be, or rather he turns you into something that you could be if you let loose all of your inhibitions. So Kaius talking about this is what my sister said, it's the same. Any brilliant liar like Glitch doesn't lie, they tell the truth, which is exactly what Glitch kind of does. He picks certain parts of the truth and gives you that, and the truth in Kaius' case is that his sister Illayla, she did talk to him and she did say things to him, but she never said anything about the Spire. That was all Glitch. Glitch has that knowledge and he gave it to Kaius, and Kaius just inserted it in under Glitch's direction. So all of Kaius's trauma when he's saying it's really hard for me to talk about my sister and what she said is true, it's real. He doesn't want to talk about that. But the lie comes from what he actually says, which he uses to direct people to go to the Spire so that he can get the algorithm fixed, so that he can steal it back. And yeah, poor Kaius. He gets a really bad deal in this, I think. My poor kitty cat.
Well, we're gonna switch gears over to the Blackrunners. So, somebody wanted to know if there was any rhyme or reason as to why certain Blackrunners inherit certain aspects of the Four.
Any rhyme or reason? It's every soul is different, I think. In any profession, you're going to have people that are good at certain parts of their job and not so good at others. And Blackrunners are no different. Like, they all Blackrunners are. Trying to think of a good example, but Blackrunners are as individual to themselves as they are different. Like every single Blackrunner of fame has kind of got their own nickname, like the Whisperer, the Blind One. They've all got their own kind of names. They've all got their own stories. They've all got their own achievements, and no Blackrunner is the same as another, which is necessary in terms of them, because there will be things that one Blackrunner can do that another one can't do. So it kind of necessitates them working together a little bit. But it also means that as a whole, Blackrunners can explore different parts of the Black Zone and learn different things. But then when they come together, you've got a group that possess completely different skills that can accomplish more together. So really it was that I didn't want all Blackrunners to be the same. Like Nitro and Loken, they have very different styles of doing things. So they are different characters. I didn't want us to meet Nitro and be like, oh, he's just another Loken, basically. He's kind of a blueprint of that. Same as when we meet Bakara. She's a very different Blackrunner to Loken and Nitro. She's almost a rogue Blackrunner. She doesn't follow the path. She doesn't work for other people. She uses her skill set basically to keep herself alive. So yeah, to me it was just the reason that Blackrunners are kind of different and have different skills is that they all have to be kind of different characters, in a sense.
So somebody else wanted to know if the reason why, what's his name? Mylo and I guess to a certain extent, Nitro have almost some human-like features, like their eyes. Is it because at one point in their past, I guess, a bit of human DNA got mixed in, or was that not possible and it happens some other way?
So I think all Blackrunners have got human heritage. Alex kind of figures out that's what the 4 basically is human heritage. It's magic, basically. Alex has this magic completely unfiltered, and he's always going to be more powerful, but any Blackrunner has that as well. And he kind of uses that as proof to say to Loken, look, this is who I am. This is part of being human now. I can't just ignore the fact that I've got these abilities and I've got this connection to Soulcreek, because you've got it as well. It's not as powerful, it's not as deep, because you only maybe have a sliver of human blood in you, but it's there. And it's a thing. I mean, he even points out, Nitro basically sees in the Blackroot zone by looking through the memories of dead Zephyr, which is magic. He kind of says, look, this is magic. So yeah, definitely, all Blackrunners have kind of got human blood in them. And in terms of like diversity, like human eyes, human ears, and human hair and such, like I'd say like Illayla itself and the Bipeds, it's a huge genetic pool. So you could have Bipeds that have hair that aren't Blackrunners at all. Like, it's a huge genetic pool. I think one of the points that was mentioned is some males have this anatomy and some males have this anatomy, which is what Orion says to Alex. So there's, even without Blackrunners having that kind of human heritage, there's still a huge amount of genetic diversity within this kind of furry society, if you like.
Are there actually, would there have ever been a possibility that a Blackrunner that was maybe not 50-50, like, human DNA and then biped DNA, but like that had enough in human inside of them that an infant made contact with them and then somehow ascended? Would that ever become possible, or did they need full-blooded humans to do that?
I mean, that sounds like an elevator pitch for a short story. I mean, no, genuinely, that would be a good elevator pitch for a short story. I'm not saying no. It's not something we see in the story, but absolutely it could be possible. Which is why I like questions like that, because it's like, some of these questions just open up possibilities. It's like, well, I try to not to say no to this stuff. People say to me, oh, could this happen? Yeah, why not? Sure it could. It's a big world. Illayla is a tiny part of this world. There's a whole planet that we haven't seen. We don't know what's going on outside in that planet. We don't know if the cascade is still going on. We don't know if there are humans out there. We don't even know if there are black zones out there. So could an infant kind of ascend through someone who has a very heavy human heritage? Absolutely. What would be the result of that? What kind of abomination freak would come out of that? That would be a hell of a story.
Are there any Blackrunners in the Hushlands, or is there a like an equivalent to that in the Hushlands?
Loads of Blackrunners in the Hush. In fact, you will find most Blackrunners in the Hushlands, because that is where they can go to almost. That is where people need them the most, almost. You got to imagine Illayla is like the privileged kind of protected land, and the Hushlands around Illayla are enormous and just in horrendous need of support. The Hushlands, they're like, one of my biggest regrets in this story actually is not expanding on the Hushlands earlier than just the last build, because it never came up. It should have come up, really. But the Hushland is kind of like, I remember visiting a UK city. I'm not going to name the city in case there are any people there who will get offended, but I got off the train. The city centre was absolutely beautiful, like really well done. And then as soon as you get out of the city centre, it was a pigsty. It looked like a really run-down, horrible place to live. And like that's kind of like how I picture Illayla in the Hushlands. So most Blackrunners spend their life out in the Hushlands, like hundreds of them. Like Bakara would be a good example. She would come to and from the Hushlands quite a lot, because that's where most of the Ashlander gangs are as well, and that's where she kind of does most of her business and does most of her stuff. So Loken is kind of notable for being a Blackrunner who kind of stays within Illayla, and he does all of his work there, which is one of the reasons he's got so much fame. Also because he was Aya's apprentice, and she was like the gold standard Blackrunner, like the one that everyone looked up to. But yeah, absolutely hundreds of Blackrunners out in the Hushland of any shape and form that you could imagine. Rogue Blackrunners, like good Blackrunners, evil Blackrunners that have just lost their way, and insane Blackrunners too. Plenty of those.
Somebody asked me to, well, not somebody, Cryptid asked me to bring up the origin of the last build's name.
Did he now?
Yeah.
He's a good yin. So I should so for anyone who doesn't know, I should explain. Cryptid and I are good friends, and this is him jabbing at me, I think. I'm gonna get you, Cryptid. I'm gonna get you. So Epiklesis was suggested by a friend of ours, Taco, who suggested the name to me, and we're using it as the name of our Alien RPG campaign that I'm running, which Cryptid is a part of. So he was like, tell them where the name came from. It's basically one of those. So Epiklesis wasn't my name. It was credit goes to Taco for that one, but it fit really well. And I said to him, "Can I use that? Because it's really good." But yeah, Cryptid and I, we kind of admired each other from afar because we were both visual novel devs, and then a kind of our mutual friend suggested, well, why don't we bring Cryptid in for this Alien TRPG, which is how we kind of got to know each other. And yeah, that's where the name Epiklesis comes from. I'm gonna get you silly yin.
Okay, so now we're going to be talking a little bit more about the ending specifically. Like stuff that happened in the ending. Or I guess the last build. So, were Alex and Mylo able to find anything interesting while they were in the Hushlands? Or was it just going to be more of the same?
No, I imagine they would be they're a hell of a duo, I imagine. They've got a lot of good work ahead of them. These are two Blackrunners, one of whom, like Alex, is supremely powerful, and another one, Mylo, who is powerful in his own right as well, and will become a great Blackrunner. These are two Blackrunners that are have the ambition to do stuff that no Blackrunner has done before. By the end of the story, Alex has all of these promises that he has to keep to rediscover the old knowledge, to find his people, cure the ascendancy problem, try and figure out a way to stop the affliction. These are two people that have the capability to do some pretty dangerous things that no one has ever done before. So they're going to become, they're going to become a real. They're going to become a real team, I think. They're going to do great things, potentially dangerous things. And, well, whether or not their relationship fosters or not, that would be something that would have to be explored in a sequel. If such a thing were ever to happen. No comment. But, yeah, they're going to change a lot of things, I think.
Will Tahki and Nitro eventually become a thing while they're in the Hushlands?
So Nitro is he kind of admits that he's ace, which is kind of like Tahki obviously is kind of displaying a bit of an interest in him, and he's a little bit like, oh, I don't think Tahki would ever be interested in me because I might not ever be what she wants. But I kind of like the idea that we leave it open that what they have can just be a really close, trusting friendship, which can turn into a loving friendship, absolutely. And I think that, again, those two are going to do incredible things together because they're such a good team together. Tahki in Nitro sees someone who is staunchly loyal when she's been raised around Dravonia, who is very conniving, and she really looks up to that. And Nitro she sees Nitro's compassion as well, something that she doesn't see very, very often. And it's true compassion. Nitro is a truly good person who goes out of his way to protect people because it's the right thing to do. And in Tahki, Nitro sees a fierce warrior who is capable of so much but is not able to reach her potential because she's stuck being first guardian for this person who is essentially holding her back, and thinks that he sees this amazing person in her and he wants to see what she can really do, which is why these two kind of team up together. And they'll be a hell of a power couple.
So their job is basically to go around the clans of the Hushlands and try to teach them about the dangers of the Black Zones, or what specifically?
Basically, you've kind of got it there. I mean, the big kind of world-changing revelation in Soulcreek is that demons can leave the Black Zones. Breaches are a real thing. And for people that deny the existence of demons in the first place, that's a real dangerous place to be. So Nitro's kind of plan to heal the Hushed Lands, which is the place that needs it most, is to go around and expel the ignorance and the denial and say, look, this is a real thing that can happen. It's happened before. We're here to make sure that you're prepared. And people aren't going to want to hear that. People are going to reject him, which is why Tahki's there. Tahki's there to do her thing and explain in her own way, no, he's telling the truth. Listen to him. I'm a war hero. I'm the Badger of Carmine. This has real happened. And if you don't listen, I'm going to twist your nipples until you do. Because you need to hear this. And they're basically going to dispel this idea of ignorance is the order of the world, starting in the Hushed Lands, but they're going to encounter their own obstacles. They're going to encounter their own challenges, their own enemies. I mean, you could write a sequel just based on those two, on what they get up to, which is why I like the idea of keeping it open to the future and what could happen with them.
Somebody wanted to know how much more dangerous the Hushlands actually are, but the more that I think about it now, from what you said, it really does sound like both places have their own level of danger, where Illayla feels like it's safe because, you have like your little clans, and then you have the Black Zones, and you know where everything is, and then there's like land in between, where the Hushlands, it kind of sounds like everything is a little bit more like right on the border of each other. But like,
I think
the same point, well, they know more or less what they're dealing with.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the Hushed Lands, they're probably a bit more street smart to the dangers out there, so they're probably more able to protect themselves from natural dangers. But the offset of that is there are more natural dangers. The borders of the Black Zones are much more narrow. I imagine, like, in Illayla, you have wide open spaces, and the Black Zones kind of form a wall around it. The Hushed Lands, I picture as being more like a maze, where there is very little safe ground to track. Kind of the odd kind of open pocket of Black Zone or non-black zone space that is safe where a clan might set up, and then more real narrow passages around that are just extremely difficult to travel. But at the same time, that opens up for more Ashlanders. So there's more Ashlander gangs, which means there's more kind of daylight robbery. There's more kind of renegade clans that live off other clans. It's more like a Wild West out there. Whereas Illayla has some sense of law and politics and these big, powerful chieftains kind of keeping the law intact. It's more kind of seen as, oh, this is where the civil people live. But at the same time, Illayla has its own dangers. So it's by no means a safe place at all. But I think the Hushlands are more aware of the world that they live in.
Well, yeah, like in Illayla, you have these two warring tribes, or Dravonias and Kaiuses, and Kaius harbored all this, well, not hatred, but like resentment, and he wanted to get rid of the Automonks, which everyone like basically was relying on and everything, so it was very precarious, and even though it looked all nice and quiet, it, like, one wrong move with one guy and everything just goes to hell.
Yeah, really in Illayla, the whole politics of the land and the whole safety of that land is dictated by the chieftains and what they get up to and their politics. And at the moment, you've got 4 powerful clans. And how safe Illayla is, it completely depends on which clan you're in and what the political kind of temperament is at the moment. In the space that our story takes place, everything is pretty stable. But we know even not that long ago, there have been 2 wars between these clans. So it's not like it's a safe place to be by any measure. And even within Illayla, kind of within the black zones there, we know that there are Ashlander gangs that are starving to death, like the Black Dawn, that are living in these horrendous conditions and barely keeping themselves stable. And the chieftains won't let them into Illayla because they're not safe people, even though there's tons of room. That's one of the reasons Tahki kind of gets disheartened with Dravonia, because she sees it for the first time. She sees there's plenty of room in Illayla. Why can't we take these people in? It's like, oh, no, there's not. Because there's not enough food out there to feed them. There's not enough space for them. And it's down to the chieftains, really, that dictate this. I mean, Kaius was very much in control of who he would allow into Illayla and who not. I mean, I think there's a line that says, why don't some of the nomadic clans just settle down in Illayla? And Tahki says, well, just they'd have to take it up with Kaius. And nobody's going to take it up with Kaius. Things are going to change now that he's dead. That's going to be a huge upheaval. And Dravonia is absorbing the Riptide clan and, well, absorbing most of the Riptide clan. A lot of them are just going to refuse, and that's going to cause a whole thing. But Dravonia absorbing the Riptide clan is going to make her even more powerful. Now she's the main powerhouse in Illayla. So difficult times ahead for Illayla. And a lot of people, I can imagine, would think, nah, I'm not up for this, and they would just leave for the Hushlands. So a lot that could be told there.
Do you think Dravonia is up to the challenge of now merging the 2 clans and then basically being, maybe not a seat of power, but like basically being like the big chief now that she has like these 2 clans merging?
Yeah, being the big cheese. Absolutely. Dravonia is an opportunist. Like, she will work things to her favor and take opportunities where she can. She's in good favor with the Automonks, which is a relationship she's worked on for years, which gives her a huge advantage because she has access to their technology and their support. And now she has a huge clan. I mean, if she wanted to, she's got the numbers to absorb the other clans now. Would she do that? Maybe. We don't really know. But it's down to her as what she it's basically down to her what she decides to do and where her ambitions take her. And we don't really know what her ambitions are, only that she's always looking for more power over people, more power over her clan. So it's never going to be enough for her. She's always going to want a little bit more. Right now she's consolidating what she has, but in many ways, she could be far more dangerous than Kaius in many ways. I mean, Kaius was brutal, but at least I think one of my favorite lines about Kaius was Kaius would never stab you in the back; he'd only stab you in the face repeatedly.
Actually, talking about Kaius again, how do you think Illayla would have looked had he won the Saber War?
I think it would have been... It's hard to say, actually. I think you got to imagine what his goals were. He would have... basically, first of all, the Automonks would be gone. And after he'd won the Saber War, there would have been a slow process by which any form of Zephyr technology was basically destroyed and made heretical. I imagine there would have been maybe some kind of religion would have risen out of that. This idea that the ideology that technology is actually now forbidden, and having it is like having contraband. A lot of people wouldn't have gone along with that, so I think there would have been a huge mass exodus from people into the hushed lands, which would have sent them into disarray, into disbalance. Kaius would have had to basically force this ideology on a lot of people, which wouldn't have been easy to do. He would have had to take over. He would have basically had to unite every clan under his rule, and it wouldn't be a compassionate rule. It would be a harsh rule. And then there's the fact that having removed technology from the land, everyone has to learn to live without it, which would create incredible hardships, which is why a lot of people didn't like living in Riptide, because it was a really tough place to live, because they only had primitive technology. I think it would have made Illayla quite a bleak place to live. I think it is for the best that he lost, I think.
Another hypothetical. Had Kaius and Glitch managed to open Soulcreek all the way, what would have become of Illayla?
Something very bad, I imagine. It's left a little bit vague as to what Glitch actually wanted with Soulcreek. Obviously, he's capable of interacting with it and drawing power from it, but what did he actually want to do with that power? Well, if we're looking at it from Kaius's perspective and Glitch is kind of riding on his motivations, imagine what I said a moment ago about Kaius winning the Saber Wars. Then imagine that again, but much worse. That would have basically turned Illayla into the birthing ground of an ascended demon. We talked earlier about ascended demons need time to grow, like hundreds of years. Illayla would have basically been Glitch's nest to grow from that. He would have grown from Kaius. And I think he would have grown into a god that would be feared by everyone, who would be incredibly suppressive and would probably feed off people's kind of almost feed off their misery. So Soulcreek, or so rather all of Illayla and probably all of the Hushed Lands would have basically become Glitch's feeding grounds, where he would just slowly feed off people's souls and grow until he becomes this godlike entity. And that probably would have been the end of Illayla and the Hushed Lands altogether, because suddenly all you're left with is Glitch, this being that becomes fat and powerful off suppressing all of these people until there's none of them left. And then he would just grow even further and further and further until, goodness knows, maybe until he runs into another ascended demon that's out there, maybe until some incredibly brave Blackrunner is able to stop him. It's very much left up to the reader what they think Glitch would have been capable of. I think it would have been something terrible.
I kind of picture it sort of him, like how you said, growing and growing, but also eventually reaching a point where he also starts to sort of feed off of the infants, and then just basically turning like their world into just Glitch. It's all just him now.
Yeah,
or like
definitely.
that, like the gray goo, but like it's whatever Glitch would be, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you got to imagine that an ascended demon basically forms their identity around what they have around them. So Glitch, as an ascended demon, this god entity who slowly grows, would absorb everything around it into himself. Everything would become a bizarre caricature of what it already is. The infants would become his, the black zones would become his, and he would just become this kind of living manifestation of all of the misery and all of the suppression and all of the fear in Illayla, manifested into a single kind of entity, creature, which could decide that it just wants to sit happy and stay there, or it could decide it wants to spread over other parts of the world. Would be a tough time.
A little bit more about Glitch. Alex mentioned that he believes that Glitch was actively looking or chasing his father. Was that true? Did they have like some
yes.
sort of a history?
Yes, definitely. Infants are insane and kind of more animalistic in their mindset, but they do have a rudimentary intelligence, which is more like an instinct. And each one is an individual, and one infant is perfectly capable of learning all this algorithm. I'm drawn to this. I don't really know why, but I'm drawn to this. And then exploring that, discovering, oh, this algorithm is linked to this one person. I'm going to go after them. Almost like, kind of like a dog chasing cars. And this infant Glitch is just chasing this algorithm, chasing the pieces of it and chasing its creator. And it's like a dog that's got your scent. Once it's got your scent, you can't escape it. And Wyatt was in that unfortunate position of knowing it knows me now. It knows my soul, it knows my scent, it's coming for me. And it's gonna get me sooner or later. Which is what happened in the end. It did get him. But he made preparations. You know, Wyatt was extremely intelligent. Like he would have been like a modern Einstein, I guess. Kind of an absolute leader in his field. And he made these preparations to try and protect the algorithm and to protect his creation and protect what remained of his family as best he could. He didn't know what was going to happen with Alex, but he just did what he could to protect. But yeah, ultimately, Glitch still gets him in the end.
Another one of Glitch. Did Alex actually get to torture Glitch for a while? Because it kind of seemed like it's like, okay, I'm going to torture you. I'm going to make you wish that I would just kill you. I'm going to teach you like the whole meaning of wanting to wish for death. But then all of a sudden it just sort of like cuts and to Alex sort of stumbling out of the volcanic pit mine thing. Was he actually able to torture him, or is he just holding on to him still?
So I think that because in this mind space where Alex is, where he has Glitch, time is not necessarily perceived in the same way, that Alex was able to do all of those things he said he was going to do to Glitch in an instant. So I think by the time Alex stumbles out of that cave, like minutes after having his arm lopped off, spoilers, Glitch is dead at that point. There's no Glitch left by the end of the story. He's gone. The real purpose of that scene was that Alex has become, at this point, so dangerous and so aware of this power that he's turning this idea that demons are this incomprehensible force, and he's actually saying, I'm going to turn that against you and revert. I mean, he's pulling an Uno reverse on them and saying there are horrors from our world, a horror of fear, suffering, pain, that I'm going to teach you. Your world is not the only world that has horrors. Here are some of our horrors, and I'm going to teach it to you, and I'm going to make you regret ever coming here. Just to kind of put the nail into the coffin that he's become a force to be reckoned with. But yeah, definitely, I think Glitch is dead by the end of the story. We're not going to see him again, thankfully. He's done.
Sia Parker wanted to know how the story would have, if the story would have turned out differently had the protagonist been somebody else that wasn't Alex, like say Tabitha or just some other random human, or like Wyatt.
Yeah, I think so. Alex starts out as kind of a blank slate because his memories have been erased. He doesn't know who he is, and that was important because I wanted to create this illusion that the reader is Alex, like you self-identify with him, as you do with a lot of other visual novel protagonists. But that slowly changes as the story goes on, and we discover his personality, that actually this is someone who is pretty vindictive and very incredibly ambitious. And we slowly get more and more divorced from him as the story goes on, which is why there's less kind of flavor choices as the story goes on. Until the end, there were almost none. But if it had been someone else instead of Alex, possibly, yeah, they might have just collapsed from the insanity of their discovery. They might have chosen a completely different path. I think something Alex is really keen to explain to people is, look, no, I made this choice. This was me. I am not a result of my circumstances. I am my failures. So yeah, I think definitely, yeah, the story would have been different if it had been someone else.
So finally, let's talk about that ending scene. Like, well, that I guess it's the after credits scene. So what exactly is Alex planning to do? Like, is he going to just open the gate? Or is he going to like try to commune with whatever is on the other side? Or what is his end game with that?
Okay, let's talk about Alex. Because he is the pillar of this story. Let's talk about him. So Alex is somebody who's gone through a trauma that none of us can possibly empathize with, really. Plenty of characters and plenty of us as readers probably think we can, but nobody has or ever will experience what he's having to live with, what he's essentially discovered over the last 2 weeks because of his memory erasure. That he is the only one left of his species. Everyone else has been horrifically wiped out. The world that he knew is over. His family was horrifically murdered, and he himself was killed in a horrendous way. And from that, you get Alex's feelings of rage and powerless that really all of that comes from a lack of purpose. I mean, what's he supposed to do as the last living human? He can't procreate. He's told at every angle that hope is lost for humanity. All he has is, I'm going to get revenge. I'm going to give into my rage. I think at the end, I think he realizes he can have a purpose. He can do things. He can cure the ascendancy problem. He can solve the affliction. He's got an acolyte to train. He's got Biped to look after now. He can rediscover the old knowledge that his father did before him. He can live happily with Loken. He can discover what's beyond the hushed lands. He can work towards finding any remnants of his own species and maybe even bring them back. He believes by the end of it that saving his species is possible. You know, he's figured out how to hope by the end of it, which is what he lacked before. He had no hope. He just had rage. By the end of it, he has hope. You know, he's no longer guided by nothing but anger or the sins of the father. He's focused. he's powerful, and he's acting on his own sound judgment. However, there's another side to that, because that doesn't make him any less dangerous. This is someone who has ambitions and has the power to enact them. Whether or not that makes him safer or more dangerous is up for debate. I mean, this is someone we've seen kill 30 people in a blind kind of rage episode and then come out of it and feel horrible regret. By the end of the story, is this someone who would coldly and gladly sacrifice 10,000 bipeds to save one human? What kind of deeds is this person willing to commit to achieve his goal? And in that last scene, that's basically what he's turning into. We see Alex reclaiming his power in the right way. You know, as Kaius said, true power is earned. And that's what he's doing. He's earning it. He's now someone who has his own ambitions, and he's got this power to do it. And something that's key to me, after he's reclaimed his power and he's become basically the witch that he was always going to be, this mage who is capable of great destruction or great healing. We don't really know what he's capable of doing. Something that's key to me about that post-credit scene is that it's the moment that Alex, as a character, becomes fully divorced from us as the reader. You know, he no longer cares for our judgment. He no longer has to mentally justify himself through his narration. And we, as the reader, no longer know what's going on in his head. We don't know what he's doing. We're thinking, what the hell are you doing, Alex? We don't know, because he's shut us out. He doesn't need us anymore. And we're left adrift wondering, what are his plans now? What is he willing to do to achieve them? Now that he's fully unleashed on Illayla as this powerful witch, is he going to do great things? Is he going to do terrible things, or a little bit of both? And I see a lot of people saying, oh, it's a bad ending because he's been fully corrupted by Soulcreek. And I think, no, I don't think he has been corrupted by Soulcreek at all. I think he's fully in sound mind, and he's fully kind of slowly learning this power. But that's worse for me, because we don't know what that means. We don't know what he's capable of. He's become a force we no longer understand, we can no longer predict, and nobody has any hope of stopping. So in a sense, he's become incomprehensible to us, in the same way that demons are incomprehensible to us. But it's really important that he's not senselessly evil, but neither is he senselessly good. We just don't know what he's capable of. Only that he's powerful and ambition, and we know as a character he has the capacity to be incredibly loving and compassionate, but also unleashing terrible wrath on his enemies. And that's kind of what we're left with, this horror of, what is he now? We don't really know what person he has become. So that's kind of what the end credits is kind of setting up, this idea that he's become something else now, basically. I think that's all I can say on that.
I think if there was ever to be a sequel, it would be interesting to see it from the perspective of some other character who eventually encounters what Alex becomes.
Yeah, definitely. I think a sequel from Alex's perspective wouldn't work, because he's become something else now, something that we can't really associate easily with. I would love to see a sequel from the perspective of someone else seeing the aftermath of this. But again, no confirmation that there's gonna be a sequel. I will confirm, yes, I am planning on doing more. Whether or not that's a sequel, I will let people wait a little while longer to discover. But there are plans, I will tell you. There are plans in place.
Well, now that the story is just finished, well, at least that the main story is finished, what do you plan to do now? Are you just gonna rest? Are you gonna maybe dive into some other form of medium, or gonna play some games, go out, travel?
Well, I mean, I work full time, so traveling is out until I have money. But in terms of resting, yeah, I am going to kind of take a little bit of a rest, but in the sense of, oh, I don't have to worry about a deadline for releasing this build. Am I going to rest from writing? No, I'm not. And earlier I said, oh yeah, I am working on something else. I've already got like 34,000 words written for something else, so I'm not resting in that sense. But I'm not kind of following a deadline now, so I'm taking it easy. I've got tons and tons of Warhammer miniatures to paint. I've got lots of music I need to write. I've got a whole backlog. Of other visual novels I need to read. So I'm just going to take it slow, be a bit more mellow, and jump back into it when I'm ready.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about the icon that you have on Discord?
Oh, is that the which one is that? Is that the
Loken and Rhoun.
Loken and Rhoun. Yeah, again, that came from Cryptid and I just kind of messing around. I think someone sent me a someone sent me a poll of like, oh, there's like a competition of who's the most neurodivergent, and Loken and Rhoun are the finalists. And then a couple of days, I was like, oh, okay, weird, but okay, sure. A couple of days later, they came back and said, oh, they tied for first place. And Cryptid and I thought it was hilarious, so we just took up these icons just to be like, lol.
This is something else having to do with him, but actually, was there or is there any plans for, like, I don't know, merch for Soulcreek?
Like a cross between Roadjet Traveled and Soulcreek?
Oh no, just like merch for the visual novel. Like, I don't know.
Oh, merch. Sorry.
Yeah, merch.
I misheard you. It's my British accent. I can't understand anyone. Yes, there is. I'll keep my cards close to my chest. But yes, there is. It's on its way. There's stuff coming.
Woo. Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's all that we have time for. I mean, it's already going to be 2 hours that I've taken of your time, and I know it's a little bit later over there than it is over here. So,
all good.
So, thank you for sitting down and talking to me about your visual novel and answering some of the questions and stuff.
Always. Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing a great series on it, because it means people who can't read it have access to it, which is why we need more content creators. Get out there and make YouTube videos.
Competition.
There's that as well.
Well, thank you, and I look forward to seeing what else you have in store.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's been fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that's it, and bye.
Yeah, and everyone else, I will see you all later, and thanks for listening to my rambling thoughts.